At InDigital, we know that public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI Net goes beyond industry standards, not only i3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
It is a new day for 911 professionals. They have gone from the most important person you will never see to the most vital piece of public safety. Truth be told, they always have been. The curtain has been pulled back, and they are sharing their stories. Welcome to Imagine Listening. Your worst day is our everyday, by Ricardo Martinez II, and narrated by myself, Ricardo Martinez II, and distributed by Beacon Audio Books, copyright 2023. That's right, everyone. Finally, I can let everyone know the rumors are true. Imagine Listening, Your Worst Day is Our Everyday is now available as an audiobook on Audible, and it's a long time coming. Very excited. Not a lot of authors get the opportunity to voice their own book, but I had the honor and privilege to do so. So thank you to Beacon Audio Books, as well as my publisher, Titled Town Publishing, for everything, but especially all of you for making the I Am 911 movement, as well as Imagine Listening, what it is today. I appreciate you all more than you know. So go ahead, head out, stream it, download it, however you consume your audiobooks. Imagine Listening is now available. When a non-English speaker calls 911, telecommunicators don't always have the best tools to get them help fast. As a result, callers are left waiting while critical minutes pass, and telecommunicators are left powerless as they wait for an interpreter. Not only is the caller put in danger by lost time, but in an era of high call volumes and short staffing, other callers are too, left to wait as their call rings a busy line. To ensure you can communicate with every caller at any time, you need Prepared Assist. Prepared Assist translates audio in 19 languages and audio in 140 plus. If the caller speaks a language that isn't English, Assist will automatically translate it in the live transcript. If the caller can't speak, or their language isn't translated by audio, you can text them to let them know they can text you, and then communicate with them in the language of their choice. With translation through Prepared Assist, you can understand the caller in seconds, not minutes. Visit prepared911.com/translation to learn more. If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and we are about to get started with Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital, Leader Next Gen Core Services, and a big shout out to Prepared as well for being a Social Media Plus sponsor for the month of March. You've heard the information in the beginning of the episode, and there's some information at the end as well. Make sure to look out through my entire social media network to find out more information about what Prepared does, or you can simply go to prepared911.com and get more information there.
let them know that Ricardo Within the Trenches podcast sent you. Also, a big shout out to all of those that subscribe for bonus episodes, ad-free episodes, swag, discounts to the store, all of it. That is subscribers, whether you are on Facebook, Circle, or Patreon. Thank you for your support. I wouldn't be able to do everything that I do if it wasn't for all of you. But especially all of you who are watching, listening, supporting, and sharing. So thank you so very much. And really quick, I just want to mention as well, if you don't follow me on Instagram, please do so, whether it be the podcast or my personal Instagram, and that is at RMARTI 23. That is at RMarty 23. And the reason I bring that up as well is because I feel like I have been kind of confusing the audience a little bit, because I have been posting everything on the podcast, whether it be podcast clips, in continuing education, or any of that stuff, or some of my own like personal motivational, inspirational type things that I'm putting out there. Not that it shouldn't be there or anything, but people go to that account simply for all of those stories, those true, powerful stories from the 911 dispatchers who lived them. And adding my own kind of personal stuff in a way, my speaking engagements, all of that stuff, that's kind of confuses the audience a little bit. So, on my personal one is where you will find all the continuing education, imagine listening, all the other types of stuff that I am doing specifically. I'm still going to be posting everything else the same way that I usually do, but for Instagram specifically, I am splitting up the accounts and doing them separate. Basically, so that I can organize things, not just for myself, but for the audience, because I want you to have the best experience possible. So I just wanted to make sure to let all of you know that. And we got a lot of conferences, classes, and everything else that are going to be coming up pretty soon. But just keep an eye out for those. And if you need any more information, just simply go to links.co/WTT podcast. All right. We got all of that stuff out of the way. And I am super excited for my guest today. And I've actually wanted to have this person on the podcast since probably a year or so ago now. There's a conference that the National Emergency Number Association, or NENA, puts on, and it's called the Standards and Best Practices Conference. And it wasn't this most recent one; it was the one from the year prior that I was at. I was sitting in a class, and this gentleman was on the panel with a few other folks, and I was just sitting there, just taking notes and notes and notes. And I've been wanting to have him on ever since that time, and this person probably has no idea, but they do now because they just heard it. They're in the green room. And I'm about to bring him up. My guest today is Brad Flanagan, and he's the emergency ops manager over at Peking. Is that right? County Regional Emergency Dispatch Center. That's a lot. Out of Colorado.
Yeah, it's a mouthful for everybody every time.
Oh man, yeah. So when you said it, I kept repeating it in my head, and I was like, it kind of sounds like Peking duck. I got to I have to try to remember it like that a little bit, because just reading it, like looking at it the way it's spelled, it doesn't sound like, the way it's pronounced at all. So
Right?
I needed to have that in my head so that I could say it. So how are you doing, man?
I'm doing well. It's been a really crazy year for technology and a lot of stuff that I do. So it's just been a lot of fun getting to play with everything this year. It's been a blast.
Oh man, excellent. Yeah, and like I was saying, a couple SBPs ago, I was sitting in and I was sitting in the back, and I was just taking notes. I was just listening to you guys talk about basically I think it was like a future think tank type
Mm,
panel that was going on, and you guys were talking about the future of 911 and how AI might play a part in it and all this other stuff. And I just thought, I gotta have this dude on, and it's been a while, but here we are finally. So
yeah.
I'm glad to finally have you on.
No, it's awesome to be here. Talking about that future think thing, that is really where I kind of started a lot of the stuff that I do today is through when Nina started building this whole committee at their development steering council side that's called Future Think. And I get to chair that and just watch people see what's going to be happening in the next 5, 10, and 20 years into the future. So a lot of the stuff that I talk about is that, hey, what if we tried this? And then I've got a group of just experts that sit there and tell me how it's either possible or completely bonkers. And I get to just play with all of these cool ideas. And so it's so much fun.
Dang. I'm jealous because those things are really cool, man. I mean, it's not for everyone, right? There's a lot of
Right.
people who go to those and are like, oh, we're just listening to talking. Like, no, man, like really get into it. Focus on what it is that they're saying, because these are things that are going to end up coming in. And the stuff that you guys are talking about, like, just a couple years ago, is all really starting to take shape, and you're seeing certain things. And we'll get to a lot of that here towards in the episode.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
want to go back in time, and I
Oh,
want to
good.
learn more about you first. So how did you get involved in public safety to begin with?
Well, so I got involved in 911 literally on a dare. I came out of, so 2 days after high school graduation, joined the Marine Corps, was a cryptological linguist doing signals intelligence work. Um, in the early 2000s. And when I got back home, jumped into the oil field. So I was working oil field in Western Colorado for a number of years, and out of nowhere it shut down. So like overnight, I was chasing 30 rigs with my crew, and they shut down. And one of our dispatchers for our oil field services company just was reading the paper and saw an ad for a dispatcher in our local community and said, "Oh, hey, 911's hiring." And I said, that would be fun. That would be interesting. And she turned and looked at me and she's like, "You could not do that job." So I applied and got accepted. And, I had gone through Spanish and Kurdish linguistics and got a diploma with honors at the Defense Language Institute. I learned downhole hydraulics and hook loads and all these high end math for the oil field. And I got into dispatch, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And it was very much one of those realizations that this is for real. This is hard. Um, and I never did become a good call taker, not ever. I was always that guy that was like, red truck, white fence, northbound, and everybody's just losing their minds because I was just awful at call taking. But what I was really good at is finding processes, and that's where I really started. I saw that I could be useful in that. It was like I see the things that don't make sense, and that's where I really started contributing to my agency, and then further on.
Man, okay, so straight up dare, like seriously, a dare.
Like legit, you can't do this. Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
like,
watch me.
I will show you. Yeah. And you've been doing this for about 15 years now. So
Yeah,
what a dare. What a dare
yeah.
to go through and end up, getting in. So off this dare and applying and everything, did you get a chance at all to do a sit along to actually see what it was like? Or did you just jump in? You're like, let's go.
Yeah. Well, so mine was super fast too. Like I got right at the tail end of a hiring pool, so they were very much like, "Can you show up tomorrow for the interview?" I was like, "Yes." And I ran through in like 2 months, and I didn't know what to expect. I didn't do any research. I didn't look at it. I didn't even sit in a comm center. The first day I sat in a comm center was my first day answering phones, and so I was, yeah, did not expect it. Did not know. I was like, "Oh, this is going to be easy." And I fell in love with it. I love dispatching. That's my favorite thing in the world because it's so complex. There's so many different moving pieces. You get to control so many different things at once that it's just fun. And somebody like me that's head is all over the place doing this, it's just a blast because that's a skill set, right? When I was little, I got diagnosed with ADHD when I was little, and one of the early 90s, Ritalin kids. And every job I'd ever been in that was kind of a hindrance, right? That, being frenetic, being all over the place, being easily distracted was a problem. And then you get into 911 dispatching, and that's a skill. Being able to jump from this to that to this to that to move around, I could do things and it felt natural. Where every other job I had, it was trying to be organized and trying to figure everything out, and it just worked. And I loved dispatching. Then you get into management, and it's the complete opposite, where you have to be organized, you have to get stuff done, and it's been a train wreck, but it's fun.
Man, so I feel like everything that you were doing right out of high school, military, oil fields, like all of this stuff that you were learning, it all especially the oil field part and everything that you were saying, and but, the things that you were learning as well, all of it super complex.
Yeah,
So, then when you get into dispatch, it's just as complex and kind of I feel like almost filling that need that you have for some of those
right.
complexities in life to keep, like, going and building and everything, and, like, this is gonna sound crazy, but I have goosebumps saying it because I kind of feel the same way with dispatch. There's so many moving parts that
Yeah,
when especially when you dial in, when you're fully dialed in, it's just you're working, you're just going,
yep,
and it is fun, which is odd for probably people to hear who have never done the job because 'cause they're probably thinking while listening to this even, um, you're dealing with people who are calling in during their worst nightmare and stuff, but you think it's fun. It's like, well, you have to think about it from our side, like, this is what our calling is. This is what we're here to
right.
do, is to help. So, yes, helping someone is fun.
Right. Well, and it's one of those, it's like a race car driver or a boxer. When you get into the zone and you're dispatching, you're calling units, you're watching your cues, you're making sure that you're making everything flow. When a major incident happens, you're tracking, you're helping get that big situational awareness piece. It starts to just make sense. It just flows. And when you get into that, it's like, look, I can help these people. And as a call taker, as a dispatcher, as a supervisor, you are helping people on their worst day, and you're directly contributing to your community, which is a huge deal, right? That's a big thing that you get to do. And that's what bit me more than anything. Like, I love the complexity, I love the challenge, but you're actually contributing back, because the oil field, you're just taking, right? I'm getting paid a lot to do something crazy, but it's a different kind of challenge where when you're helping your community, if I just treat this officer a little bit better, if I am able to make it a little bit calmer for them, if we have the ability to do it in a way that makes more sense and is less frustrating, then maybe they will be just a little bit nicer to the person that they interact with. Maybe their interactions will be a little bit better. And you can contribute to a large benefit just by that one-on-one interactions that you have with those first responders and with those officers and firefighters as they're doing their job. And it becomes scalable as you become a supervisor, right? Because now if you make a room more calm, you're able to help people grow, you're able to enrich each one of these dispatchers. Well, now you're contributing directly to how they handle their citizens, how they handle everybody that's going out and doing the job. And you can massively change a community just by making the job easier for the people doing it.
That's amazing. It's a it's kind of like it's basically saying 2 things here. 1, you are wanting to be a part of something bigger than yourself, right?
Oh yeah,
And 2, everything that you're doing or even just you, basically, you are that drop of water that when it hits, those ripples start going out, and that's where everything is getting impacted. Everything that you just said in my head, like, that's the way I picture it. A good friend of mine, Gary, Hill, he has a presentation where he talks about ripples and the impact that you might not ever know certain things that happened, but it's that impact, it's those ripples that end up continuing on, and sometimes they come full circle, and a
right.
few of those moments have happened for me as well. But man, just listening to you talk and everything, I can hear the passion, I can see it in your face and everything, your tone, just all of it, and it's refreshing. It's awesome to hear this. And so, looking back at that time, now you mentioned 2 months, right? Is what it took in there. Now, when you mentioned these 2 months, is that the hiring process, or what was those 2 months? Because you said when you got in there, you were basically already taking phone calls that first time. So where does that 2 months fit in?
Well, yeah, so I saw the advertisement, I reached out, I applied, and then I went through the hoops, right?
Yeah.
Everybody that gets hired in 911 for years and years, we're going through these very rigorous hiring practices, right? You'd have to go and do your background check and you get your fingerprints and do the CVSA and do the lie detector test and do the drug test and all these things and the 4 interviews and everything else. And it was just going through all of those steps. Now, when I got hired, we did, I think, a 2 or 3 week academy, but it was in the middle of a construction zone because the PD was being rebuilt. So we were like in a
Yeah.
trailer off to the side of the police department, and we just sat and read policy. And it was just, the way things happened back then was so different than, like my center, we do a 3 week hiring process. We try and hire as quickly as we possibly can. The training program is very different so that we can start reducing those amount of times, those places where people are getting hung up and they're taking, 9 months, 10 months, 12 months to get through training. And that's, very really where a lot of the technology stuff I do too comes in, is how do we make the job easier and faster? Because yeah, when I first got hired, it was still, on a print track CAD, the old dot matrix looks like a Apple computer sitting there.
Yes.
And you're trying to figure out, the exact command line syntax to make it work, where, we're working with a couple of different CADs right now to try and do no tables. We're looking at like maps. Use just a map to do dispatching,
Mhm.
and no unit queues, no tables, no nothing, and make it intuitive to what we're actually doing. Where back then, man, the training programs were challenging. The CTOs were tough. They were gatekeepers. We had staff that when I got hired, they wouldn't learn your name or talk directly to you until you got signed off, because it was like you're just new guy number one until you've earned it, right? And that environment, just like you were talking about with ripples, it just really affects the people that are there. It affects the next generation of people and everything else. And when we start shifting that culture, and that's the big thing that I've noticed in like the last 5 years, culture has changed. And if it's not changed in your centers yet, it's changing, because at the national level, the stuff that I get up and say never would have flown 5, 10 years ago. They would have been like, you are insane, you are crazy. When I start talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and making sure you meet your people's needs so they'll stay in the organization, and it's, Deming's 85-15, the whole idea of most of the time, it's not your employee's fault. Most of the time, it's management, it's processes, or it's equipment. And if we start solving those problems, we keep people. And if we keep people, they get better at their job. And if they get better at their job, we'll have a great thing that we're doing, right? And back then, it was literally, if you're an island of perfection, you'll get your job done and everybody will be perfect. But we cut down each other, we knocked each other over, we tried to prove that we were the best. And we lost a lot of people along the way that could have made this industry just, way different than it is.
I fully agree. Just listening to you, it's kind of like this session that I have, and this is not this is not a shameless plug. I'm just mentioning this session
Plug
that
away.
I have. Yeah, Where it's called Triumph Through Struggle, but there's a portion in there where I talk about bridging the gap between seasoned dispatchers and the newer dispatchers that
Right?
are coming in, because I feel like there's a certain point and that we get after working, however many years, that we forget what it was like in the
Yeah.
beginning. So in the class, it's basically discussion with everyone to, to see, you've got 20 years of, in dispatch. What was it like for you in the beginning? And then they say certain things, and then the newer folks are like, well, we go through that too. Oh, we have something in common. Okay,
Right.
let's start talking. And it's basically kind of like a back to basics
Yeah.
of communication through the power of storytelling. But that's one of those things is, why do we eat our young? Why do we do this? And one of the points that I have in there is that there's a saying that says, hurt people hurt people.
Right.
So are we just continuing this vicious cycle with those folks who were hurt like that in the beginning and think, well, this is what I went through, so this is what you're going to go through too?
Yes.
No, let's stop that bullshit. Like, why?
Well, it's the same thing that we all see, right? It's like, God, when I become a supervisor, they're not going to treat me like that. When I become a manager, that's my boss and I. So my boss and I were both night shift supervisors together in our previous agency.
Yeah.
And we would sit at night and bitch and moan. Like, God, this sucks. I don't know why management's doing this. I don't know what's going on with this. These people are awful, all that stuff. And I said, if we have the opportunity to do it different, we will. And what we realized when we were doing that is, it's like, look, it's not about finding the way it worked and figuring out, well, if dispatchers, they make it through the crucible, they have to be forged through the fire of whatever experience we put them through. You know what? If they're forged through the fire of their calls, that's going to be great. But when they're forged through the fire of getting beat up by their peers, by have to prove themselves by their supervisors, that's not cool. So we, when I run into problems, my goal is to make it so that the next person doesn't have to experience that same thing. Because if I can find a new manager, a new supervisor, somebody that really has talent, has potential, has that want, it's like, what can I do to take the roadblocks that I had to deal with out of your way? Because you might be way better at this. And if I can make you better than I am, then we're all winning. And that's that piece that once dispatch starts feeling that, it's, I'm looking for my next boss. As a supervisor, you're trying to find your next peer, not trying to make people do what you need to do. I'm looking for those people that you're going to be awesome at this, and I'm going to help you figure it out. Because when you're awesome at this, I helped do that. That is a huge change in just our mentality.
Yeah, the change in mentality, the change in culture, the look at mental health and wellness, the look even more so at technology and how that's working with 911 as well. All of it is coming up, and it's been coming for a while. It
Yeah.
continues to build, things continue to change, and they're changing for the better. And so, when you got into this profession, when you start out and you're going through, you mentioned the way the CAD system was. My CAD system was the same way. It was called the AS400, and
Mm,
we had all of those command lines and everything too. You had to memorize all that shit, and I mean, it was good to memorize it. Like later on, there were some folks that were saying, well, they were showing us where to find certain things. And I was like, well, that's good that you know where to find it, but you need to memorize that because
right.
that makes you that much faster.
Yep.
And because you're wasting precious seconds, and we're
Yeah.
dealing with lives. So
Smooth is fast, man. The smoother you can go, the faster you are.
right, exactly, yeah. And so for you, when you go through, your training and all of this is happening, do you remember like those first calls, those earlier calls that you first started taking?
Oh, well, yeah, well, I remember when 911 would start ringing, right? The 911 lines would start coming up. And remember, I had combat experience. I spent time in Iraq. I spent time in Eritrea and Haiti and some other places. Uh, a 911 line would ring and my heart would go up into my throat instantly. It was like, oh, geez. And so I'd have to do this little thing every single time. It's like, 911, this is Brad. What's the address of your emergency? And then I would jump into it.
Yeah.
And through training, it was just repetition and realizing that, you know what, most of the calls we're going to take are okay. Most of them are going to be all right. And the bad ones, thank God that I get to deal with them because I've seen some stuff, I've done some stuff. So if I can take that on, I'm all about it because it's not going to affect me the same way it affects somebody else in the room.
Mhm.
Early on in my career, I was dispatching. I was doing a tactical channel for a fire incident, and we had a firefighter fall through the floor. We'd called a mayday, everybody got pulled out, and you could hear him, and he was talking like I've heard people on the radio when they weren't going to make it, right, on
Mhm.
in combat. And he was just like, it's really hot in here. I don't know where I'm at, but man, it's really hot. And he was super calm and super quiet. It was like, I'm going to listen to this guy burn to death on the radio. And the room was falling apart because we had firefighters' wives, we had former firefighters, we had a couple of EMTs that became dispatchers, and they were really struggling with this because they were listening to it and they were able to process. And fortunately, at the end of the day, he was just laying on a bunch of coals, and when he rolled off of it, he realized he was fine. But
Oh.
going through that at the time, it's like, this is a big deal.
Mhm.
And because of my previous experience, I was able to keep it together during a really big deal. And I took that kind of call was what I took when I became a supervisor. And it was like, when we have an officer involved shooting or a SWAT incident or any of the other pieces that we run into, it became a really big deal to me that if I stay as calm as humanly possible and I have the ability to process this and make it not a big deal for my staff, everybody else will make it not a big deal. And then we can get through some of these really rough ones without it really hurting until later. and then you jump into SISM and you do all the critical incident stress management. But in the moment, calm is smooth. And if I can keep everybody else calm by not freaking out during this incident, we're going to be golden.
It's interesting how that influence and mindset works, right? And the reason I say that too is because when I was a supervisor, I remember being in a staff meeting, and there was someone there on a different team who was just saying over and over, "There's no way you can influence my mood. There's no way you can this or that or whatever." And I spoke up right away. And I said, if I'm your supervisor and I'm coming in and I'm in a shitty mood and I'm making it obvious that I'm in a shitty
Oh,
mood
yeah.
and treating you guys crappy or just being short with you or whatever, you're going to feel that and you're going
Well,
to feed off of that vibe.
and the patrol will feel that, and the
Right.
EMTs will feel that. If dispatch is in a bad mood, I mean, and really, even growing up, I had supervisors. They'd walk in the room and you do a day check. Hey, lady, how you doing? Fine. Ah, crap. Okay, so today's
Right.
gonna be a day, right? If you're like, hey, lady, how you doing? Oh, I'm good. Yes. Okay, we're gonna have a good
Yes.
day. Let's go play. And that feeds through everybody's career.
Yeah, it does. And in the same on the same sense of that, when I was talking to that person, I had said to her, but if I come in and I'm all, it's gonna be a great shift, let's do this. Yeah, just building it up, right? Pumping people up. Like you're gonna feel good. It's like when you're walking in the store or something and someone says, "Bro, I like those shoes," or "Awesome hat." And you're like, "Oh, thanks."
You just
It
kind of
yeah, it's a
step
little
up a little
boost.
bit, right? You're
Yeah,
like, hey, I
right.
can do this.
Exactly, and it's the same way in any profession, man. Just a little bit of
Right?
kindness goes a long way, and especially in 911, we need that. There's a lot of hell, a lot of horrific that is 911, but there's also a lot that's rewarding as well.
Oh,
There's a lot of good stuff there too, and, it's sometimes, we just have to communicate.
right. Yeah. Well, and it's knowing and being intentional.
Mhm.
A lot of
Yeah,
times we forget that me walking into the floor now, if I come in and I'm upset about budgeting and I'm upset about what I'm doing with the com board or any of these other directions, if I'm coming in and forgetting that my intention is to show my people they matter, show my people that they are the reason that I'm doing everything that I'm doing. And if I can walk in and be like, hey, how are you? What's going on? How's your day? Joke with them, play with them, talk with them. That means that they know that I've got their back. When a big thing happens, talk about it. And especially when you start looking at that Demings again, right?
mhm,
It's not their fault when something goes wrong. There's a process that we can work on. There's something that I can do to make it easier for you. You guys keep getting addresses wrong. Well, what if we change the map? What if we change the way we take the call? What if we change the way we look at our location data? It's not you got a wrong address, you're going to kill somebody, because they know that. And
right.
that's being pressed by everybody in the room. And sometimes we see some bad stuff. But if I can walk in and be like, hey, you've got this, and I'm going to give you every tool possible to make it easy for you to get this and knock it out of the park. Their confidence goes up, their trust in me goes up, and when something bad happens, we're going to grow together, right? And then you're doing like one of my favorite people in the world, Tina Bonetta, always says is, you're meeting your people where they're at, and you're figuring out how to facilitate that for them.
There's so much that goes into all that is 911. And so I have to ask, because you started in the front line and everything,
Mhm.
you go through, you end up having this call that early on as well. And you end up going into being a supervisor. You're doing, training and other stuff as well. What was your reason for that? The reason I asked too is because it's especially with training and such, it's always like one of two things. Either a person had shit training and they wanna do better, right? They wanna do better for those folks that are coming in to kinda mold that next generation of 911, or they had a good trainer, they had good training, and they were so inspired that they wanted to do the same thing and continue to pass on and leave that legacy to continue for years to come. What was it for you?
Well, so for me, I started seeing the interaction between supervisors and dispatchers and saw
Mhm.
how that really changed the day, changed the world, changed everything that we did, right? And I decided to go back to school because I had my GI Bill, I had all the stuff, I hadn't used it. And so I got my bachelor's degree in psychology while I was a dispatcher. And as I was finishing that up, I started seeing a lot of correlation between the way people were reacting and the way people were feeling. The way we were treating staff was the way we were building our own culture. And I started seeing all these correlations. And I was like, I can't change this right now. I can see it, I can identify it, but I can't do anything about it because at the line level, you can scream and you can shout, but until you get a supervisor and a manager to buy in, you're not going to be able to get that done. And you can do a lot of leading from the line. You can change your shift, you can change your peers, you can create some positive pockets, but really changing process, you got to get into leadership roles. And so as I was getting ready to become a supervisor, said, this is something I want to do. I actually went to grad school for public administration so that I knew how the public admin worked. So that while I was trying to build policy, while I was trying to change things, I understood it because you'd always hear that, well, that's not the way the public sector works. And so I was like, okay, fine, I'm going to fix that. So I'm going to be like, actually, it is. So this is how we're going to do it. And it showed me that, I became a supervisor so that I could affect change, so that I could be a change agent in my organization. And you have to you have to go through the steps. You have to earn it, right? I spent 6 years on the line, or I spent 4 years at the line level, and I spent 6 years at the supervisor level before I started getting into those managerial roles where I could really change culture. And when I went into a newer organization with that management spot, I mean, we went from that 30-40% attrition, that, eating our own, going after people, hiring, and then going through these challenging training processes to, we turned everything up on its head. And we said, we're going to try everything different. We're going to be counterculture to everything that we've learned as a base for our 911. And we started retaining people. Our diversity and our hiring changed. We've got crazy DEI in our organization. And it was all happenstance because we created an environment where people are welcome.
Mhm.
And I've lost two proficient employees in like 2.5 years. uh, I've lost two trainees to ability in the last year. uh, so we're holding our people because we changed the way we interact with them. And more than anything, I got into supervision so I could do all this. And that was, gosh, 10 years ago now.
It sounds like you had a vision from the beginning though, man.
Well, when you see people that are hurting and you're like, I can fix this, but it's going to take all of this to do that. Sometimes you just slow and steady pressure for years and years and years to get it done.
That is very true, and that's something that not a lot of people, like to put a lot of their time into because not a lot of people have that patience. It's the long game, and,
Right.
sometimes people just rush in. They're like, "Ah, we'll be fine. We'll go ahead and do this," and then they realize, "Oh, okay, wait a minute. We should have taken a little more time. Maybe we should have thought about this a little more before going in." But this is good. So I have to ask as well, when you ended up switching and, promoting up to, let's just say, supervisor, did you have, um did you have, like, what you see on social media sometimes where, like, your team ends up getting you a cake that says, "You're dead to us now"?
Oh, I became one of them really quick. Uh,
Oh.
it's that us and them. It was really funny because I it took me a while to figure it out in the supervisor spot
Mhm.
because supervision to me was the same as it was in the Marine Corps. I'm the boss, you're the subordinate. I'm going to tell you what to do, and I can fix these things, but I'm going to fix it for you. I'm going to volunteer you how you're going to react to this, right? And I was very, yell at your staff and fight for them in the background. In fact, we had a girl that got promoted right after I did, probably about 6 months, 8 months later, who came to me and said, Brad, I had no idea that you cared about us. I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, I'm sitting in these meetings and I'm watching you fight for us. You fight for the staff. You always look at how we're going to take it. What's going to be the reaction? What is the long terms? All the stuff that I preach now, She's like, I had no idea, because all you do to us is hold us accountable and yell at us and do all these things, but you're fighting so hard in the background. And I was like, well, yeah, that's what you do. You fight for your people and then you hold them accountable. And she was like, but if you just show people what you're doing and you just tell them how much they matter, that will change this whole thing. And it was like a light bulb on. There was like, they really do matter, and I really do care, and I really want to see all of them succeed. And all I have to do is say that. All I have to do is show them, you matter, and I'm going to do this to do that. My boss, so a little while ago, one of our employees was having a custody challenge and having some issues, and was like, I'm going to have to leave because uh, I can't work overnights. I can't watch my kids and do the job.
Mhm.
And it was like, okay, first, that's a solvable problem. You don't have to leave. Let's look at what we can do. And we ended up vacating my office and turning it into a sleep room. And then we made our conference room into a bullpen for me and the IT guy and the director, so that we could have a place she could bring her kids that was safe, and that she didn't have to quit her job just because of this new circumstance. And it's those things saying, I care enough about you guys to do this thing. And, we once you show them, once you get that buy-in, once they know that, hey, Brad's going to do some boneheaded things. He's going to make some calls that are crazy. He's going to try a technology that's not going to work at all. And he's doing it to help us. We stop losing employees. We stop having people feel like they don't matter. The last survey that Nina and Carbine put together had, the reasons people were leaving organizations. And it was very much, 76% of the time, and I'm making that up, they're doing it because of their bosses. For grad school, I did a research study that was a comparative analysis between law enforcement officer stress study, which takes a survey from cops and says, these are the things that are stressing them out the most. And then I took and customized it for dispatch, so that it was, instead of you're responding to a burglary in progress and you don't have any information, it's you're sending officers into a burglary in progress and you don't have any information. It was like 180 questions. Dr. Michelle Lilly actually did all my stats for me. And this is in 2012, so way before all the stuff that's going on. And what we found was cops and dispatchers have almost the exact same stress outside of personal safety, right? That they are all pretty much the same. And you know what the number one stressor for both cops and dispatchers is?
Was that?
Their boss. It's their direct supervisor. It's not calls. It's not anything else. People quit jobs because of their bosses. And if we just show them that we give a shit, they will stay.
Damn. I fully agree. I agree. I've been saying that a lot this episode already. I agree, and I do, because that's what I've been kind of telling people as well. Is, if we can put that out there that people actually care, and have people actually communicate with each other better, people would stay. They would feel welcomed. I mean, on social media and some of the private groups, I saw a few people who posted on there saying, "Hey everyone, I'm leaving dispatch. I don't feel recognized. I don't feel, this or that or whichever. And I've tried to talk to some of my superiors there, and they don't care. So I'm going somewhere that or trying to find a place where they actually do care." And I
Right.
thought, man, what if their boss or even, a supervisor or whatever just happened to just say hello that specific day when
Well,
they posted that? Maybe that conversation, maybe, depending on how bad it was already, but maybe that little bit of conversation there, communication, it would have stopped that person from leaving, and they
right.
would have maybe stayed a little bit longer.
Well, and even something like, a lot of times we're trying to put out fires, right?
Mhm.
There's so many things going on that we're attacking this problem, we're hitting this problem, we're doing this. But if you start thinking about the solutions in that same kind of idea, right? Management process equipment, that if you can show your people that you're trying to solve it for them in a way that is enriching, that it's, yes, I'm going to say hi. Yeah, we're going to do the pizza party. We're going to do the crazy TC week stuff, but we're also going to find the challenges that we have and find solutions for them. Like my jurisdiction, it's funny because we have a really unique problem that people can't really afford to live near the comm center very easily. A trailer in a trailer park, in a normal trailer park, is 1.2 to 1.4 million dollars. So people live 45 miles, 50 miles from the comm center. I live 89 miles from the comm center. So in what we started doing is, instead of figuring out how we can make a better PSAP in Aspen and doing all this, we said, what if we could take our center and start moving it that direction? We start moving it where people can afford to buy a house. And we started talking about the idea of, what if we split up our PSAP? And so instead of having one big building, we started saying, what if we did a smaller building and another smaller building 20 miles down the road, and another smaller building 20 miles past that, and another smaller building 60 miles past that? And they can all interact and they can all work together. Now my dispatchers don't have to commute in the snow, in a dangerous road, to get to a place where they're going to do the exact same thing they can do near their house. And we're doing it because we care about them. That totally changes it. And that's bonkers. The first time I said satellite center to people, they said, you are insane. You're trying to destroy 911. And that was 3 years ago, right? And now when you start talking about remote work and virtual work and these changing PSAPs, that all becomes much more of a reality. And that's kind of where all of my tech guru ridiculousness started, was I want to solve this problem. And it's not a personnel problem, it's a technology problem. What can I do? And that's where Future Think started, was literally doing satellites before anybody thought about virtual. And it was like, hey, this might be a thing. And then it gave me the right, because it was so successful, that my agency said, oh yeah, do whatever you want, because we were going to build a new 911 center for like $15 million. And the satellites cost like 200 grand a piece. So it's such a good value for them that they're like, yes, do that thing. You just saved us $12 million. Do whatever you want, because it's going to save us money and it's doing all this. And so it gave me freedom to start being crazy. Start saying, I want transcription and I want satellite in all of the patrol vehicles, so we can start making a mesh network on all the major incidents. So I can do radio over IP, and we can start looking at different ways of locating people and different ways of dispatching and automating as much as we can, and doing all these things, because my agency saw that I can save them money and I care about the people. So all of these other processes in the middle, they're like, is it going to help? And I'm like, I think so. They're like, sure, try it.
Holy,
Right.
that's a lot of stuff, man. There's a lot of it, but also, as I said in the beginning, about everything that you were doing before you got into dispatch, it really did kind of prepare you for everything that you're doing now.
Oh
Just like
yeah.
the problem solving, and just going through all of these different processes and just putting them all in there together. Now, there's a couple other things that I want to ask you here, but I want to ask you this first before we get to these other parts. And of course, as long as you feel comfortable sharing, um, what about a call that sticks with you?
Oh man. Okay, so this is a call that you and I talked about. Probably, I was in one of the Imagine listening uh, at Nina,
Yeah.
and it's the call that always sticks with me the most. And there's actually two that I'll talk about. The
Hmm.
first one is, I was very, very early into call take, and I got a call from a mental health provider. They called and said, "Hey, we've got this guy. He keeps hanging up on us. He said he slit his wrists and jumped into a dumpster." And I was like, "Okay." And they're like, "Here's the phone number. He's not answering for us. Good luck." And being new and being young, I was like, "Okay, well, what am I supposed to do with this?" So I called the number and it answered, and there was nothing on the line. And then about 5 seconds later, it disconnected. And so I tried it again. I called it again and I could hear breathing, but no response, no anything. This was like 2010, 2011. So it was, location services weren't nearly what they are today. Um, I had no other than the statement that he gave. And he said, the health worker even said, I think he's making it up. He's just being dramatic. So I called a third time and I heard breathing. I said, okay, just don't hang up on me, man. I'm here and I want to talk to you. Just, if you want to, just listen to me. My name is Brad and I'm here to help you. Uh, where are you? What's your name? What's going on? And nothing. And eventually you could hear him go, you don't care. And I said, no, 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 I do care. He's like, you don't even know me. And I said, it's not about me knowing you. It's about, I care because I signed up to do this. I have to care because I'm willing to do this with you. Now, I'm not going to get off the phone until you're ready to get off the phone. Let's talk. What happened? He's like, I tried to call the hospital and they wouldn't answer. And then they put me over to this mental health facility and they won't answer. And they keep putting me on hold. Nobody gives a shit. And I said, okay, so I'm here for you. What happened? And he talked about his family and he talked about nobody being there. And finally he said, I'm laying in a dumpster. I was like, okay, so I need you to get out of the dumpster, because we couldn't ping his phone because he was in a metal container, right? And so
Wow.
we had nothing.
Yeah.
And finally he said, it's cold. I'm too cold. I'm so cold. And I was able to talk him to the point that he, got out of the dumpster, and we were able to ping his phone and figure out where he was at and got patrol officers there. And he had slit his wrists and he was dying. And it was one of those that when intention, when you forget that you're here for these people, when you're so busy doing all the other things, I could have very easily taken 2 of those phone calls and written it off.
Mhm.
And if you take the time to do the thing, just take that little bit of extra time, you can absolutely change somebody's life. It's like this poster behind me on this side, that thing right there.
Mhm.
That poster board is a picture of an Anasazi dwelling. It was from an artist who I had taken a call from when I was a supervisor, and I sat for like an hour and a half on the phone with this guy because he was lost. He was trying to find his hotel. He was supposed to be going to the VA, and I walked him. We literally drove to every hotel in the downtown area that I was living in while I was on the phone with him, giving him directions till he found his hotel. And a week later, we got a box in dispatch that was like, oh my God, somebody sent us a bomb, right? Because it just said, to the night dispatcher.
Yeah.
And we opened it, and it was this painting, and he was a famous artist. And it's the inscription says, night dispatcher, I don't know who you are, but you taking the time when you didn't have to help me changed my week. And the VA said I was in really bad shape. Thank you so much for all that you did for me, and sent that. And that's a reminder that I keep on my wall, that sometimes spending 2 hours on the phone with an old guy who can't find his hotel is more impactful than you will ever realize.
Wow. Thank you for sharing both of those stories, and especially everything that happened with this second one, because I feel like there are. uh, I've said this before, and I'll always say this, and I don't know how you feel about this, whatever your past experience, or especially where you come from, your background and everything. Um, but I feel like there's some phone calls that are meant for us.
Yes.
And it's because of whatever experience that we have, life experience, whichever. Not that anybody else wouldn't be able to do a good job. They probably do a great job, but we have a specific experience that helps certain callers that are going through similar things. And you've got that connection, as well as being a veteran, but also just having that patience, that experience, and everything to go through with both calls, not just the second one, but with both of them. Because you're right, there could have been other calls that were coming in or whichever, but I also feel like for us, we dispatchers, 911 call takers, all of it, all of us as dispatch, we have this thing in us where we will not stop until we've exhausted every
Right.
single resource, because we are our own worst critics. There's not anything that anyone could ever tell me that would make me feel worse than I already did for, whatever happened. If somebody called in, thinking back to when I was in dispatch, like you were saying, around that time, location accuracy, not there, right? It's not the way the technology is now. And I would exhaust all of my resources to try to find someone. And if we couldn't find them, I'm beating myself up for the rest of the shift.
Right.
And so, there's all of these different things, all these different factors and variables, but I feel like for whatever reason, a lot of these calls are just kind of meant for us, and I kind of feel like these calls were kind of meant for you in a way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I had a trainee a couple of months ago that asked me, what is the one thing that you can say that makes the best dispatcher or call taker? And that's a very loaded question, right? It's like, oh,
Right.
the one thing, right? Okay. And I said, I think you have to be passionately dedicated to solving a problem. And that's the piece. You have to be able to, if it's not getting them to the right place, it's finding the right way to help. It's the making sure that you take that extra time. I've had trainees quit that are like, the fact that you called 6 different tow companies and then you reached out to the next jurisdiction over because you realized it wasn't in your jurisdiction, and then you followed up to make sure that they got the right tow, that's insane. And it's like, no, that's passionate dedication to solving the problem. And
Right.
they're like, "I just don't have that. I don't care enough about people to do that for my evening." It's like, "Well, then you're not in the right place." Right?
Right.
And that is the difference between a amazing call taker, amazing dispatcher, and somebody who's good at their job.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. If you don't have that, where if you don't have that in you, that um, uh, you will go through everything so
Right.
that you're not hurting as well. Because in my mind, I'm also protecting my own mental health and wellness
Oh, yeah.
by leaving nothing to chance. Right, that I did every single thing that I could do. It's basically giving myself that gift of closure in a way
Right.
where I kind of I feel, I guess, content with
Right.
it, right? But also satisfied that I went through everything.
Well, and it's that exact same thing, talking about the closure piece. Closure is different for good dispatchers, good, when people who care about this job. It's like the domestic violence people, it's the overdose folks that we have, that you hear the same names over and over and over again. And you can tell the people that are passionately dedicated to this, because what we're trying to do is we're not trying to fix it. We're trying to give them another opportunity, right? We're trying to give them one more chance to make a different decision. And if you think about it like that, I will talk to that lady every single night, because one day it might click. And then when
Right.
it does, and she does the right thing because we stayed on the line, because we sent the right help, because we never gave up on her, we saved her life. We changed her life. You talk about wanting to change the world. You have changed somebody's world when you do that. And there's nothing bigger than that.
Exactly. Exactly, man. That's what it is all about. And so you mentioned that the area that you guys cover, also includes Aspen, right?
Yep. Aspen,
So
Colorado.
so in my mind, I mean, skiing is there as well, right? But I think you said that some of the other things that you guys deal with there are bears?
Oh yeah, bears are one of the biggest things that we deal with all spring and fall. So bears walk down downtown Aspen. Our biggest challenge is them getting into buildings. There's a YouTube video out right now of a bear mauling a guy in a kitchen, like he knocks him down and runs out. That was last winter in Aspen, at one of the big restaurants. We definitely deal with bears more than just about anything during certain times of the year. Like we have to be careful with our deputies for bear boards. So have you ever heard of a bear board before?
No, I was just gonna say, what the hell's a bear board?
So around cabins, to keep bears from getting to windows, because they can open windows, they can break windows, they can open doors, they can break
Mhm.
doors. If it's a place that's not being inhabited, what they'll do is they'll put down plywood, normal sheets of the 4x8 plywood with screws and nails sticking up all over. So when the bear steps on it, it's like, oh, pokey, don't do that. But when people step on those, it's going through your boot, going through everything, and you're stepping on these nails. So we have to like be very careful. Do you have bear boards out? They're like, yeah, we got a bunch. Okay. So we tell our deputies so they stay about 5 feet away from the perimeter of the house while they're trying to figure out how to get this bear out of a cabin. That's destroying the inside of this place, because somebody, as they're running out, closed the door behind them. But yeah, we deal with bears and skiers a lot.
Jeez. You explaining the whole bear board thing, it just it kinda makes me think like this is like a tame version of like a minefield
Yeah, Yeah,
that people are
very.
running through, and you have to know where they're at. And yeah, I have never heard of that before. That's pretty interesting.
See, so if you come to like these tourist communities, lots of snow, lots of that, if you're getting a cabin, don't walk on the sides of the house until you've checked it out.
That is good advice right there. That is good to know. Holy moly. So I want to go back really quick as we're kind of going into the wrap up of this episode, which is crazy. We're already going on like an hour, man. It doesn't even feel like it's been
I
that
know,
long.
we just started.
I know. So, I want to go back to the whole tech guru thing,
Mhm.
and how you just kind of, got into that. You're going, you're in a lot of panel discussions, a
Yeah.
lot of different things that are coming up. And the reason I want to mention this as well is because there's a lot of technology that's really just kind of booming into 911. For a while, a lot of people would say, especially when I was working as an industry partner, people would say, how come DoorDash or Uber or whatever can find me like that, but you guys can't. And then I would have
Hey,
to explain, all of it and how it works and stuff. And they would go, "That's dumb." And like,
right?
okay, well, I understand, but it's, there's a privacy thing, and the people don't want to. You have to ask permission and all. And they're like, "Ah, well." So there's all of this, right? But there's also AI. And so
Mhm,
there's a couple things I want to mention. First, a few years back, the IAED,
mhm.
the International Academies of Emergency Dispatch, they had reached out to me as well as several other people, and I don't know, you might have been in there on it as well. I don't remember now, but they wanted people to write articles, and it was like, what do you think 911 is going to look like 50 years from now? And the article that I wrote was almost like a diary entry. It was in a time capsule, and
Mhm.
it was from, a seasoned dispatcher from, like, 2016, I think it was, and someone in 2034, or I don't know what it was, something like that, found this, and they started reading it. And the way I wrote it out was, we had all of this technology and basically, like, artificial intelligence, AI, that came out, that we kind of lost our way a little bit. We lost that human factor, and what people thought, was going to be a hindrance, with all of this technology, actually ended up being a good thing because of the closure piece. That because we were finally able to see certain things, if we wanted to see certain things,
Right.
that it helped with closure. So I wrote this in 2020, and a lot. I'm going to post it here soon, but again, just to bring it up, because a lot of what I wrote in there is kind of coming to fruition. Now,
100%.
the part about losing the human side of it, I do write in there that we ended up coming back and really found that you can't replace humans in something like this. And there's a lot to it, but I kind of want to get your thoughts on that before I get to the chat GPT part.
Sure. A lot of the technology and a lot of the direction. Now, the fear is it's going to take all our jobs. We're going to not have that human component, especially when you start looking at generative AI and the ability to problem solve and do some of those things. Most of the industry, the direction we're heading and the way we're trying to control it is that, there is a lot put on every dispatcher, right? Every call taker, every dispatcher is doing way more than they should be doing. And if I can make their job easier, if I can simplify the tasks that are involved in doing their job, now they can do the one thing that AI can't do. They can do the one thing that cannot happen by a machine, and that's care about their caller. And if I care, I can be present with them. I can be problem solving with them. I can be compassionate towards them to change the scenario. So, if I can take away all the tactile things around this, if transcription services are giving me summarizations on the calls and are directly inputting into my protocols or my CAD and those things, if the nature codes are selected for me and just pops up and says, "Do you mean this is a verbal disturbance?" And I just say yes, then they're not telling people, "Ma'am, hold on one second," and typing. Or you get that big barrage of information at the beginning of a drunk driver call, right? Where it's like, "Hold on, what did you just give me?" That you've already got all of that information. You say, "Okay, I want you to stay safe. What are they doing now?" and moving directly into getting information. Because the thing that AI can't do yet, and this is still narrow or weak AI, is they cannot be empathetic and they can't truly solve problems. So I want dispatchers to do that. Take away the typing, take away the manipulation of CAD, take away the having to key up on the radio. There's a time where they may very really be talking to bots, or they're verifying all the data while they're communicating with the officers and the firefighters, that it's going to auto generate. And we're already working on having that happen right now. But the having an analyst sitting in the background. So the larger PSAPs, like how your supervisor is sitting back listening to all the radios, listening to each one of the calls, reviewing the calls. Well, now imagine if we took that one step closer to the call. So now your dispatchers and your call takers are doing that same thing, where they're analyzing the data, they're listening, they're reacting, they're doing that. Now think what your supervisors can be doing, since they're even one more step removed. Now it's about wellness. Now it's about caring. Now it's about ensuring. Now it's about people. And we can start really focusing on the people rather than the processes to get them right. And the more we can simplify the tasks that they're doing while they're saving somebody's life, the better we'll be at that job. And so that human component is the biggest piece, and it's the most important piece. And all this AI and all the automation and everything else is making sure that when somebody needs a life saved, that they can get it from us. It's pushing off the low-hanging fruit, the non-emergent calls. It's the automating other things. It makes it easier for us to do the one thing that we're truly called to do.
So what you're saying is, a lot of centers will end up having emergency communication analysts.
Yeah, I mean, to be very real, that's my vision of what's going to end up happening.
Mhm.
Is that we're going to have analysts that are making sure this is happening the right way. And you figure if we need 10 dispatchers right now, we're not going to need fewer people. We can just do a totally different job by doing that. If you can take your staff that's 40% attrition all the time, that you're taking the 60%, they can do the job of the 100% and still have enough time to team build, to solve the next problem, to beta test the next stuff. We're going to start growing by leaps and bounds just because we've got the people that can do it now. Where instead of fighting to try and answer every call, now we've got staff to truly be innovative.
Damn. No wonder you're on all these panels, man. But I mean, this is a good thing, and this is good stuff to hear and for people to really take in and think about, because I can see where a lot of people would think, well, crap, now we're going to be replaced, for certain things or whichever. And I've even seen with a couple of the posts that I put out there for different technology that's coming out, there was one specific comment where someone had said, oh great, now we're going to have even more stress and mental health issues because now we're going to be able to see certain things. But I
Right.
think what some of those folks don't realize is that it will help with the closure piece, which when I
Absolutely.
first started talking about how it would help with closure, there were a lot of folks who thought I was crazy. They were like, "What? Like, I don't think it'll help with that." And I said, "Well, if there is some sort of mechanism where it's blurred or something, and you choose to unblur it or whichever, and you're actually seeing certain things,
Right.
it will help because technically with every call, we're seeing the call. And what I
Right.
mean by
Right.
for those who are watching and listening, what I mean by that is we're piecing it together in our brains. So we're seeing it
Right.
and in a way, whatever we're hearing and whatever is going on, but a lot of times what is going on there is not what we're hearing, right? And
Well, so I had a
in a
call
way.
that was exactly like this. So
Mhm.
I had taken a call. It was a 16-year-old girl. She just said, "Hi, I have a knife. I'm laying in my tub and I'm cutting myself." And then started screaming
Mhm.
and didn't stop screaming until we forced entry into the home, forced entry into the bathroom, did all those things. Now, forcing entry and doing all those things takes time, right?
Right.
So there's about a 12 to 15 minute period that this girl is screaming on the phone. and I've seen some stuff. So like I was like, there's blood and guts everywhere. This is messing me up, right?
Mhm.
That I'm expecting to see this little girl dead. I mean, she's still screaming, so it's not even clicking with me. But like, I have all this viscera, and the responder, when they finally forced entry, they called the ambulance, and they were like, "Yeah, we need an ambulance for a 16-year-old female with superficial 2-inch laceration on the top of her leg." I mean, it was nothing. The call was non-existent, and
Yeah.
if I could have just seen instead of heard that, I would have been fine. I had to actually remove myself from the comm center, take a break, go have a cigarette, try not to break down because I had convinced myself of all these awful things that was going on with this little girl, and it was nothing. And
Wow.
we've actually been using video for like 5 years. Um, One of the things that we've realized is that we use video a lot more for the small things. Like two cars that get into an accident and pull over to the side of the road. I want to get a picture of each one of the cars, each one of the plates, and where they're at on the road so that I can see, oh no, they're in a good place. We've got the description of both the vehicles and the plates quickly and easily. With breathing diagnostic, everybody's tried to get a breathing diagnostic that's almost impossible. Okay, I want you to tell me every time they take a breath in, starting now. No, when they breathe in. No, no, now. No, not every. Okay,
Right.
I want you to turn on a video and show me their chest rising and falling. Now I can do it by myself. Or you've got a search and rescue where it's a weird place to find how they get ingress and egress out of this location. Well, now I've got a video and I can show it. That's way easier. And it's not trauma. I'm not going to get the video for the kid that stuck his hand in the corn grinder, right? I don't want to see that.
Right.
Uh, I want to use it for the things that it's going to be useful for. And sometimes the traumatic things are not going to be useful. But in the middle of a fight or a verbal disturbance, you can get a picture of both suspects. And instead of trying to ask top to bottom, inside to outside, or whatever, it's so much easier to say, look for this person, right? Totally changes it.
I kind of feel like just listening to the way you explained it as well, and kind of some of those use cases too. It's going to be the way people were freaking out about text to 911,
Oh,
pictures to 911, where it's like everything is going to go down. People are going to be sending so many prank texts or whatever, and I'm sure there's a few that probably did, right?
right.
But it ended up turning out to not be that big of a deal at all.
Well,
There
And
weren't. Go ahead.
and it took us 10 years longer than it should to get there. At least,
Right,
right? Because everybody's
right.
scared. They're like, not in my center. And
Yeah,
instead,
exactly.
if we said, okay, let's try it, let's see what it's going to do, and let's figure out a solution once we know what's going on. But everybody's so scared to death because they used a big L, right? Liability. And that big L scares everybody into inaction. And for me, it's a liability if I don't have this transcription. It's a liability if my people keep doing as much as they're doing on a day-to-day basis. If I don't simplify their job, we're going to kill somebody.
Mhm.
And that totally changes the whole game, right? Even the simple thing that I say, and every time you hear me talk about anything, in 5 years, we're going to be hiring today's eighth graders. If I don't make this job available for them in 5 years, that's a huge liability.
Right. The short staffing is gonna be even worse than
Right.
than anything else, and, so as we're talking about, um, technology and AI and
Mhm.
everything else, again, as we're getting into, like, there's the last couple pieces here of this episode, I did something recently where I was messing around with ChatGPT and just kind of talking with it
Mhm.
and telling it what I do and stuff, and then just asking it different things just to see what it would say. And one of the things that I did that I thought would be funny was I wanted to see what ChatGPT thought about the job of a 911 dispatcher. So, I ended up asking it,
Now,
what are the top 10 myths versus reality when it comes to the job of a 911 dispatcher? And we're not going to go through all of them, but as we were talking about location and everything, the number six myth was dispatchers can track the location of any phone call instantly.
yeah. I
That's
mean,
that's the myth.
totally depends. with some of the new technologies and some of the sensory stuff, we might be able to get there in a while. But right now, yeah, but you get that on phone calls right now. You'll hear people today, you know who I am, you know where I'm at, click. It's like, dude, bro, I barely got your phone number, man. We're not going to get shit to get you help at this point.
Right, exactly. And so, the reality piece of that ends up because it gave both, right? So the reality, it says location tracking depends on the technology available and can vary in accuracy, especially in rural and remote areas.
Yes. Yeah. It's very true.
So some of these were spot on. Some of them were kind of a politician type answer where it kind of covered everything, PC style. But one of these other, so the fifth myth here is dispatchers have a slow paced job. What?
I don't know anybody that ever has thought that. I mean, you can watch the call and realize, okay, maybe this is a little bit more in depth than we thought.
Right. Yeah. So the reality of that says dispatchers work in a fast paced environment, making split second decisions and managing multiple emergencies simultaneously.
Okay.
Pretty spot on. I
Yeah,
would
not
say.
bad.
Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
you using ChatGPT 3.5 or 4 for this?
3.5.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a higher tier to pay
Dude,
for number 4,
and it's
and
shockingly better. It's like
really?
shockingly better.
Okay, so I might have to actually throw the money at it so that I can
20 bucks a
use it
month.
then.
Throw the money at it.
I'm gonna have to try it. So I'll go over the number one myth, and for those who are watching and listening, I have posted this clip out there, but I want to see your thoughts on this, Brad. And the myth, number one myth, and it says it exactly like this. And when I read it, I thought, man, ChatGPT chose violence by saying this right off the bat. But number one myth is dispatchers are just secretaries who answer the phone. I thought, holy hell.
That's a good myth. I mean, that's a good man. You're starting strong though. Holy
I
crap.
know. Yeah, that was number 1. So when I had said these, I started at number 10 because I knew that number 1 would, blow everything up for people who were commenting on it. But the reality of it, it says, is dispatchers are highly trained professionals who coordinate emergency responses, provide life-saving instructions, and manage critical situations.
100%. Well, and if we can just get the intelligent humans that are in charge of agencies, like, chiefs of places, to just read that list would help us innumerably move our whole industry forward.
Well, so I'm going to type up an article that has all of these in here, and you guys can all share it.
I love it.
You- yeah,
100%.
yeah, you can put it all out there. So, man, this has been awesome to have you on and to learn more about you and just the way you think about all of these processes and the complexities of dispatch and just all of it, moving it forward. Thank you for everything that you do and for being on. And I have one last question for you here.
Okay.
And with your 15 years of experience and everything that you have in public safety, if you could go back in time with the knowledge that you have now and talk to yourself in the beginning of your career, what is some advice you would give yourself?
Wow. That's a big one. Uh, you know, it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to take the risks. It's okay to say what if from day one and figure out those challenges, because the faster you can start problem solving this, the better everything gets for everybody around you.
Perfect. Very nice. Thank you again, my friend, for being on. And I appreciate everything that you do. And I thank you for it. And man, we're going to have to do like a dispatchers roundtable or something sometime and talk about some more stuff because I could have talked to you for hours. This
Oh,
was good.
and this is my happy place, man. Geeking out like this is the most fun in the world, and it's such an honor. I've listened to you since the beginning, so I really, really appreciate it, man.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And you know what? I will be right back here with you in just one moment. And for those who are watching and listening, if you have any comments, questions, or you ever want to be a guest on the show, you can email me, and that's going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can become a supporter of the podcast, whether it be on Patreon, Facebook, or Circle. Patreon, I will say, has the most perks that comes with it. So make sure to check that out. And you can follow on social media as well. But the easiest way to do this is to simply go to the link that is on the screen. And for those who are listening audio only, that link is links. Literally links .co/WTT podcast, but that's links with 2 I's .co/WTT podcast. You'll find everything there. My email, everything, where to find me for social media. Also, over 240 hours worth of free dispatch training and education and everything, whether it be from Crowdcast or on my YouTube channel for Within the Trenches Media. You'll find all of that on there, as well as where to become a supporter. So again, that is links with 2 I's .co/WTT podcast. This episode has been sponsored by InDigital, a leader next gen core services, and a shout out again to Prepared for being a Social Media Plus sponsor for the month of March. Again, information at the beginning, information at the end, and make sure to check out social media for all the cool content we're putting out there as well. Or you can simply go to prepared911.com and find more information there. This can be seen on Facebook, YouTube, as well as LinkedIn Live and YouTube. And for Open Mic Live, I also go to Instagram and TikTok, so you can watch all on each one of those platforms. To listen 24/7 to this show, you can hear it on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone, and we will see you all in the next one.
You just listened to a Code 7 Network podcast. If you have any questions or would like to be a guest on the show, send an email to wttpodcast@gmail.com.
When a non-English speaker calls 911, telecommunicators don't always have the best tools to get them help fast. As a result, callers are left waiting while critical minutes pass, and telecommunicators are left powerless as they wait for an interpreter. Not only is the caller put in danger by lost time, but in an era of high call volumes and short staffing, other callers are too, left to wait as their call rings a busy line. To ensure you can communicate with every caller at any time, you need Prepared Assist. Prepared Assist translates audio in 19 languages and audio in 140 plus. If the caller speaks a language that isn't English, Assist will automatically translate it in the live transcript. If the caller can't speak, or their language isn't translated by audio, you can text them to let them know they can text you, and then communicate with them in the language of their choice. With translation through Prepared Assist, you can understand the caller in seconds, not minutes. Visit prepared911.com/translation to learn more.